looking for me if I did not show up in a reasonable time. My kind host told me to go directly northwest, and I would strike the Cologne's Flats, a place with which I was perfectly familiar. He said it was about 75 miles from his place. Once there, I would have no difficulty in finding my way home. Cater put me up a good lunch to last me on my way, and, with many expressions of gratitude to him, I left him with his skins and comfortable, though solitary life. All that day and part of the night I rode in the direction he told me until about 11 o'clock, when I became so tired I decided to go into camp and give my tired horse a rest and a chance to eat. Accordingly, I dismounted and removed the saddle and bridle from my horse. I hobbled him and turned him loose to graze on the luxuriant grass, while I, tired out, laid down with my head on my saddle, fully dressed as I was, not even removing my belt containing my .45 pistol from my waist, laying my Winchester close by. The rain had ceased to fall, but it was still cloudy and threatening. It was my intention to rest a few hours, then continue on my way, and as I could not see the stars on account of the clouds, and as it was important that I keep my direction northwest in order to strike the flats, I had carefully taken my direction before sundown, and now, on moving my saddle, I placed it on the ground, pointing in the direction I was going when I stopped, so that it would enable me to keep my direction when I again started out. I had been laying there for some time, and my horse was quietly grazing about 20 yards off, when I suddenly heard something squeal. It sounded like a woman's voice. It frightened my horse, and he ran for me. I jumped to my feet with my Winchester in my hand. This caused my horse to rear and wheel, and I heard his hobbles break with a sharp snap. Then I heard the sound of his galloping feet going across the Panhandle plains, until the sound was lost in the distance. Then I slowly began to realise that I was left alone on the plains, on foot. How many miles from home I did not know. Remembering I had my guns all right, it was my impulse to go in pursuit of my horse, as I thought I could eventually catch him after he had got over his scare. But then I thought of my 40-pound saddle, and I did not want to leave that, saying to myself, that is the second saddle I ever owned, the other having been taken by the Indians when I was captured, and this saddle was part of the outfit presented to me by the boys. And so, tired, and as hungry as a hawk, I shouldered my saddle and started out in the direction I was going when I went into camp, saying to myself as I did so, if my horse could pack me and my outfit day and night, I can at least pack my outfit. Keeping my direction as well as I could, I started out over the prairie through the dark, walking all that night and all the next day without anything to eat or drink until just about sundown, and when I had begun to think I would have to spend another night on the prairie without food or drink, I emerged from a little draw onto a raise on the prairie. Looking over onto a small flat, I saw a large herd of buffalo. These were the first I had seen since I became lost, and the sight of them put renewed life and hope in me, as I was then nearly famished, and when I saw them I knew I had something to eat. Off to one side, about 20 yards from the main herd, and about 150 yards from me, was a young calf. Placing my Winchester to my shoulder, I glanced along the shining barrel, but my hand shook so much I lowered it again. Not that I was afraid of missing it, as I knew I was a dead shot at that distance, but my weakness, caused by my long enforced fast, and my great thirst, made my eyes dim and my hands shake in a way they had never done before. So, waiting a few moments, I again placed the gun to my shoulder, and this time it spoke, and the calf dropped where it had stood. Picking up my outfit, I went down to where my supper was laying. I took out my jackknife and commenced on one of his hindquarters. I began to skin and eat to my heart's content, but I was so very thirsty. I had heard of people drinking blood to quench their thirst, and that gave me an idea, so cutting the calf's throat with my knife, I eagerly drank the fresh warm blood. It tasted very much like warm, sweet milk. It quenched my thirst and made me feel strong. When I had eaten all I could, I cut off 2 large chunks of the meat and tied them to my saddle. Then, again shouldering the whole thing, I started on my way, feeling almost as satisfied as if I had my horse with me. I was lost 2 days and 2 nights after my horse left me, and all that time I kept walking, packing my 40-pound saddle and my Winchester and 2 cattle pistols. On the second night, about daylight, the weather became more threatening, and I saw in the distance a long column which looked like smoke. It seemed to be coming towards me at the rate of a mile a minute. It did not take it long to reach me, and when it did, I struggled on for a few yards, but it was no use. Tired as I was from packing my heavy outfit for more than 48 hours, and my long tramp, I had not the strength to fight against the storm. When I again came to myself, I was covered up head and foot in the snow, in the camp of some of my comrades from the ranch. It seemed from what I was told afterwards that the boys, knowing I was out in the storm and failing to show up, they had started out to look for me. They had gone in camp during the storm, and when the blizzard had passed, they noticed an object out on the prairie in the snow, with one hand frozen clenched around my Winchester, and the other around the horn of my saddle, and they had hard work to get my hands loose. They picked me up and placed me on one of the horses, and took me to camp, where they stripped me of my clothes and wrapped me up in the snow. All the skin came off my nose and mouth, and my hands and feet had been so badly frozen that the nails all came off. After I had got thawed out in the mess wagon, they took me home. In 15 days I was again in the saddle, ready for business, but I will never forget those few days I was lost, and the marks of that storm I will carry with me always. End of chapter 15.